News with Mitsumi Takahashi.
Good evening. An Air Canada jet slammed into the truck on a runway at LaGuardia Airport last night. The plane was coming in from Montreal. It had just landed. 2 pilots were killed, dozens of passengers injured. One of the pilots has been identified as Antoine Forêt. We begin our coverage with Geneviève Beauchemin and a warning: the images might be disturbing.
Parts of the mangled cockpit hang from the Air Canada Express wreckage as investigators piece together the cause of the collision.
Man, that wasn't good to watch.
Chilling audio from the air control tower reveals some of the communications leading up to the crash and its horrifying aftermath.
Man, that wasn't good to watch.
Yeah, I know I was here. I tried to reach out to my staff, and we were dealing with an emergency earlier. I messed up.
No, man, you did the best you could.
At around 11:40 p.m. Sunday, a Port Authority fire truck is responding to another emergency. Another plane reporting odor in the cabin.
Truck 1 and Company, LaGuardia Tower, requesting to cross 4 at Delta.
Truck 1 and Company, cross 4 at Delta.
Truck 1 and Company, crossing 4 at Delta.
Stop, Truck 1. Stop. Stop, Truck 1. Stop.
The CRJ 900, operated by Jazz Aviation, landing at LaGuardia, smashes nose first into the truck of the airport's runway 4.
Sadly, the 2 pilots are confirmed deceased, and notifications are being made by Air Canada's care team at this time.
One of those pilots was Antoine Forêt from Coteau-du-Lac, Quebec. A flight attendant was found nearly 100 meters from the plane, still strapped in her jump seat that was ripped from the airplane. CTV News has confirmed that her name is Solange Tremblay and that she was undergoing surgery.
We're fully supporting the relevant investigative authorities in their investigation to learn everything we can about these events.
Dozens of passengers were treated and released, but others are in serious condition in hospital.
Everybody's screaming. Pretty quickly, we didn't have any directions because the pilot's cabin had been kind of destroyed. So
he smashed his face into the seat in front of him, broke his glasses.
Sarah Dorner's husband, a professor at Montreal's Polytechnic Institute, was on board.
He smelled gas, so he was encouraging people to just slide down, go down the wing. He was there to catch them.
Canada's National Transportation Safety Board has also dispatched a team of investigators to assist in the probe. Geneviève Beauchemin, CTV News, Montreal.
Flights have now resumed at LaGuardia Airport, but all flights were grounded at the airport for much of today, and that caused major delays at other airports. John Venevali-Rao has more on that.
At Toronto's Pearson, more than a dozen flights to LaGuardia were canceled this morning, with U.S.-bound passengers expressing both sadness and concern following the crash.
It's obviously tragic. It's terrible. And try not to think about it, really.
It sounds like human error, but it sounds like it's caused from lack of staffing, maybe.
It shouldn't have happened. They'll have to look into the communication between ground crew and the air traffic controllers maybe a little bit.
The shutdown of LaGuardia impacting flights up and down the U.S. Northeast, with the airport on average handling more than 90,000 passengers and 900 flights every day. The closure coming at a tough time for many U.S. travelers, already facing huge delays and lineups at airports across the country.
This is insane. I mean, I've never experienced anything like this.
This the result of a shortage of TSA screeners, many working without pay amid a government partial shutdown. The U.S. president deploying ICE agents today to help ease some of the travel turmoil.
This is probably the worst that we've ever experienced in our 20 years of traveling.
And the crash now adding to concerns about America's air traffic control system being understaffed and its employees overworked. There's been a series of incidents in recent years, including a deadly mid-air collision. And the country's been facing a shortage of around 3,000 air traffic controllers. In audio from the latest crash, a controller can be heard saying, "I messed up."
They're going to look at the workload, how long that controller had been on duty, his past history.
Meanwhile, this afternoon, LaGuardia reopened and flights began resuming. But passengers headed to the States are still being advised to check on their flight status before heading to the airport. John Venevali-Rao, CTV News, Toronto.
Aviation analyst John Grodick of McGill says the communication between air traffic control and ground control will be very closely investigated. He also says that it doesn't help that air traffic controllers are understaffed and working under very difficult conditions.
The controllers in the U.S. are under severe stress. We know that there are about 3,000 controllers short across the U.S. aviation system. The FAA has said that they are looking to try to get people trained pretty quickly to become controllers. That's not an easy job to do. So there is a shortage of controllers, and these controllers are working some long shifts. So I don't know what the shifts were for this individual that was doing ground control nor approach control, but that's going to be one of the elements with both the National Transportation Safety Board in the U.S. and the Canadian Transportation Safety Board, who are now part of this investigation. They'll be looking at things like the amount of time that these controllers were on shift. Was it the end of a shift, beginning of a shift? Did they have a break? Did they not have breaks? All of those things that would detract from a second by second attention span that you have to have when you're moving these types of equipment across active airport runways. So that's something they're going to be looking at very closely.
The head of New York's Port Authority says Sunday's plane crash marks the first fatal incident at LaGuardia Airport in more than 34 years. Bill 21 is before the Supreme Court. Hearings into Quebec's ban on religious symbols began today. No matter what the decision, it's expected to be a landmark case for constitutional law and for Quebec society. Kelly Gregg reports.
It'll take 4 days of hearings, more than twice the amount of time most cases get, and include arguments from 61 parties, including Canada's Attorney General. But 7 judges will decide the future of Bill 21.
Today we're here to talk about what is arguably the most consequential court case of our generation.
The challenge to Quebec's ban on religious symbols centers on gender equality, minority rights, jurisdiction, and the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause. Since being adopted in 2019, Bill 21 has forced teachers who wear religious symbols out of the province.
Muslim women who choose to teach should not have to choose or be forced to choose between her conscience and her career.
A study published today by the United Nations raises concerns that Bill 21 perpetuates discrimination by disproportionately targeting religious minorities, particularly Muslim women who wear the hijab. The lawyer for the EMSB argues English schools should have an exception.
The evidence establishes that valuing and celebrating religious traditions and diversity is practiced as a way of life in Quebec's English schools.
One of the most challenging legal questions is over Quebec's preemptive use of Section 33, the notwithstanding clause.
Our challenge also raises a broader constitutional question. There must be limits on the use of the notwithstanding clause.
Today, Justice Malcolm Rowe pushed back.
Why don't you just say it out loud? You want us to review whether it is somehow justified by reference to some criteria you want us to adopt, and that we will say whether 33 has been properly utilized or not.
This week's hearings are the latest chapter in a debate that's existed since the Quiet Revolution. Is secularism a fundamental part of the Quebec nation, and can it be legislated?
So the legislator said it himself. This is about imposing a vision of values on Quebec society.
The Supreme Court has already found Quebec has its own social values. Now it will have to rule if someone who wears a religious symbol will have different rights in one province versus another. Tuesday, Quebec's Attorney General will have the opportunity to argue in what's expected to be a landmark decision for Quebec politics and Quebec society. Kelly Gregg, CTV News.
And we will have more on the story later in the newscast. We'll be speaking to Marion Sandalan. She's a lawyer who's representing one of the groups intervening in the case before the Supreme Court. A court ruling is being hailed as a victory for pet owners. A judge has ruled that a tenant is allowed to keep their pet even if their lease forbids them. Matt Grillo has more.
In the next few weeks, tenants across Quebec will begin their search for a new home. Many will have their sights set on pet-friendly apartments, and a recent decision from the Housing Tribunal will certainly catch their attention. A judge canceled a landlord's no-pet clause. M. Desjardins is the tenant at the center of this case.
I think it's amazing. It's amazing. If it can help other families to stay housed and to stay with their companions, I'm excited about that.
They had fought for years to keep their home and pet, having lived in their apartment with pets since 2011. But their current landlord said they were breaking the rules. In the decision, the judge said the general ban on keeping an animal in a dwelling therefore constitutes an oppressive and unacceptable intrusion into a person's family life, inside their own home, a privileged place of their private life. It's a major victory for the SPCA, who was an intervener in the case.
We've recognized animals are sentient beings now that they are full members of our families. The law needs to adapt to that.
But it's not exactly clear how this will change Quebec's housing laws going forward.
It's not like it will automatically overnight render everybody's no pet clause in their lease void. However, it will certainly increase the chances of anyone going before the tribunal on a case like this. It'll increase their chances of winning their case.
The tenant's lawyer in this case says many people have to make the heartbreaking decision to let their pet go.
Having to choose between your home and a pet is unreasonable, and unfortunately we've seen many tenants for many years that had to make that difficult choice, and it is very hard for them.
The Quebec Landlords Association says if building owners were allowed to ask for a security deposit, it would help.
We've been seeing that for a long time, that if we implement a possibility of having a deposit, a lot of landlords will be more than willing to accept pets in the unit.
The SPCA hopes this decision will push Quebec political parties to ban no pet clauses and include it in their electoral platform this fall. Matt Grillo, CTV News.
A French national who graduated from university here in Quebec has been caught up in a bureaucratic mess. It all began when he decided to prove that he was not only proficient in French, but also in English. Here's Stéphane Giroux.
French-born Tom Mandala arrived to study in Quebec at age 17, with what he describes as sparkles in his eyes.
I came in my class and everyone was so kind and so welcoming,
7 years later, Mandala has earned his diploma in marketing at the UQAM. He applied for his post-graduation work visa. He thought it would be a technicality.
So I went to see my roommate. I was like, oh my God, go get the champagne, you're gonna pop the bottle. I got accepted. And I opened the letter, I dropped my phone, and it was the worst night. I didn't sleep all night.
Mandala's work visa was denied on the grounds he failed the language test. French is his mother tongue, but he figured he'd do the English test, given he passed it with flying color at the UQAM.
And in my program at UQAM, I had to pass an English test to have my diploma, because it was a requirement to have the diploma. So I did that, I did the English test.
Unfortunately for Mandala, the English exam at the UQAM is not recognized by Canada's Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Department, which led to the rejection of his application. And with it came the notice that after 7 years of calling Montreal home, he had 3 months to pack up and leave. Passing another language test would have meant months of delays because of bureaucratic backlog. In a statement to CTV, Immigration, Refugee and Citizenship Department said, reconsideration of an officer's decision is available to clients who receive a negative immigration decision and can be requested through the IRCC online web form. Mandala found a way around this. He discovered this weekend that he could get a new date for an English test and that it would be much faster than to wait for someone in the government to realize that he actually speaks French.
And hopefully it doesn't take much long to get like a new visa, because like I said, I can work, and this is,
Mandala is ready to work. He just hopes bureaucracy won't crush his dreams. Stéphane Giroux, CTV News.
The Quebec Conservative Party will finally have a seat in the National Assembly. After months of speculation, reports today that the MNA for Rimouski has decided to join the Conservative Party of Quebec. Maït Blanchette-Vézina left the CAQ last September to Citizen Independent. In January, she made an appearance with Conservative Party leader Éric Duhem. An official announcement is expected tomorrow. There were gunshots in St. Leonard today. Police were called to reports of gunfire just before noon. On Junot Street near Montpetit, a front door had been shot at. 2 gun shells were found on the ground. No one was injured. And police are trying to explain Amber Alerts after one over the weekend prompted a lot of people to question and complain. An Amber Alert went off early Sunday morning. It was for 2 missing children in Trois-Rivières. People complained the alert was too loud and wondered why they were being notified of a missing child hundreds of kilometers away. SQ Captain Benoit Richard says the alerts are critical in finding missing children who might be in danger.
We need people to take action when they hear the bells or the ringing tone that's on the phone, because I know the ringing tone is kind of obnoxious, getting on your nerves and everything, but that's what we want. We want people to look at their phone, what's going on, what's missing, and can I help? And for Sûreté du Québec, the last 3 abductions, they were clearly held. We clearly had help from the citizens that gave us the information where those people were.
There is more on this story on our website, ctvnewsmontreal.ca. And coming up, will there really be a deal?
They want very much to make a deal. We'd like to make a deal too.
Donald Trump gives his deadline to Iran another 5 days. And 1,000 jobs lost because U.S. tariffs on steel. The war in the Middle East is now in its 4th week. Today, Donald Trump extended his deadline for Iran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz. The original deadline was set for tonight. Trump says the delay is because talks with Iran have been productive. Karen Travers has more from the White House.
With the war with Iran entering its 4th week, President Trump now says there are high-level talks between the 2 sides.
I think there's a very good chance we're going to end up in a deal. And so we're giving it 5 days, and then we're going to see where that takes us.
The president earlier Monday claiming Iran made a major concession.
They're not going to have a nuclear weapon. That's number 1. That's number 1, 2, and 3. They will never have a nuclear weapon.
They said yes to that?
They've agreed to that.
But Iran's state media, quoting the country's parliament speaker, says no talks with the U.S. have taken place. The president, though, says negotiations with Iran will continue over the coming days, led by his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. When pushed on who the administration is negotiating with, the president said,
The top person, don't forget, we've wiped out the leadership phase 1, phase 2, and largely phase 3. But we're dealing with the man who I believe is the most respected and the leader.
Asked if that was the new supreme leader, the president said no. On Saturday night, the president gave Iran 48 hours to reopen the Strait of Hormuz or face U.S. strikes on its power plants. He now says Iran has 5 days to negotiate.
And if it goes well, we're going to end up with settling this. Otherwise, we'll just keep bombing our little hearts out.
The price of oil did go down and the stock market went up after President Trump postponed those threatened attacks. Karen Travers, ABC News, the White House.
The mass layoffs at Algoma Steel in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario have taken effect. Hundreds of employees worked their final shift today.
We're all humans making all these decisions on who should stay and who shouldn't based on seniority, and people are phoning in. We're having to go back and double check our work to make sure that it is based on the collective agreement.
Last December, the company said it was cutting 1,000 workers because of U.S. tariffs on Canadian steel. Many of the employees affected took retirement or resigned, or some on sick leave. More layoffs are expected. Canada's Auditor General has looked into the international student program, and she says Canada's Immigration Department isn't keeping up with the demand for investigations of student visa holders. Abigail Beeman reports.
Canada's Auditor General says integrity falls short when it comes to the government's revamp of the international student program.
What's concerning for me is that the department isn't acting on the information that it has.
The report found schools flagged more than 153,000 potential red flag students to the government over 2 years, but the Immigration Department only investigated just over 4,000. And when 41% of flagged students didn't respond to the government, the investigation seemed to end there.
We will definitely do better, and we will be more consistent.
Overall, a cap on international students worked to drop the numbers. The audit found they dropped much more than expected. This graph shows the projected number of new study permits for 2024 and 2025, and the total actually approved up until September. Separately, the audit found 800 cases where applicants had either used fraudulent information or misrepresented themselves. Most went on to apply for other immigration permits in Canada, and more than half of those were approved.
We will be centralizing the investigation. We will be streamlining anyone that is flagged. We will be doing more reporting, and we will be information sharing with CBSA.
But the minister wouldn't say how many more investigations would be possible.
We've brought too many people into the country too fast for housing, healthcare, jobs to keep up. That has lowered public acceptance for immigration, and frankly, it's just a giant dumpster fire.
The immigration minister also said the report only captures the first 18 months of what is a multi-year reform. The Conservatives call that an illusion and say nothing has changed. Abigail Beeman, CTV News, Ottawa.
The Auditor General also looked into the RCMP and its failure to recruit officers.
The biggest reason would be the slowness at which they process applications that they received. It isn't a shortage of interest in the RCMP.
Karen Hogan says the force failed to meet its own target for processing times. Her report says as of last fall, the RCMP was short 3,400 officers. And coming up, the future of long-term care.
It's all just really extremely good news for all islanders.
In PEI, it is a debate over private or public for creating more beds. And budget cuts hitting farmers and how they'll be able to care for their animals.
Download the CTV News app and stay on top of local stories as they unfold.
Increasing number of abandoned buildings.
Customize your feed and watch live wherever you are. CTVMontreal.ca, your home for news.
Bill 21 is before the Supreme Court this week. It's the law that prevents certain government employees from wearing religious symbols at work. The case will test the limits of the use of the notwithstanding clause. Now, this constitutional challenge is being called one of the most important cases in charter history. Marion Sandilands is a lawyer. She is representing one of the groups who will be intervening in the case before the Supreme Court. Hi, Marion.
Hi, Mitsumi.
So, Marion, the case is about the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause, the arguments for and against. Why is this issue so important?
Well, I think this case is about really how easy should it be for governments to take away constitutional rights. So our charter has never been absolute. Under the charter, rights can be limited if the state can demonstrate that those rights are justifiable in a free and democratic society. The notwithstanding clause is very different. It allows a legislature to say, simply declare that a law operates whether or not it violates charter rights, and regardless of what a court says. And that's been controversial since day one. And up until recently, we haven't seen section notwithstanding clause used very often. Remember, the Bill 21 case started way back in 2019, and since that time, there's been a huge revival in the use of the notwithstanding clause, not just in Quebec, but also across Canada. And the clause has been used to override the rights of minorities and labor groups. And this is a trend that's worth noticing. A decade ago, everyone thought the notwithstanding clause would be so unpopular that it would be rarely used. And now it's being used in ways that are downright popular. That's a huge cultural change. Our whole system of fundamental rights comes out of the post-World War II international consensus, and I think it shows that that consensus is breaking down. And so there's every reason to expect this trend will continue. The Supreme Court is being asked to decide right now what, if anything, the courts will have to say about it.
So Quebec is saying that the preemptive use of the notwithstanding clause is necessary because Quebecers alone should determine their own laws. Is there an argument to be made for that?
Well, we have a constitution and it applies across Canada, and it gives courts the power to strike down laws that are not in accordance with the Constitution. That's been the case since Confederation. The laws of the National Assembly have always been subject to court review. And by the way, 3 out of the 9 spots on the Supreme Court are reserved for judges from Quebec. And by the way, the notwithstanding clause isn't a shield against all court challenges. It only applies to certain rights in the Canadian Charter. And in fact, Bill 21 has been challenged on a bunch of other grounds that aren't protected by the notwithstanding clause. So for example, parties are arguing that Quebec doesn't have jurisdiction to do this type of thing, that Bill 21 goes against some much older laws, and that Bill 21 violates other parts of the Charter that aren't subject to the notwithstanding clause, like the sex equality guarantee and minority language education rights. And none of these are protected by the notwithstanding clause.
Okay, but the fact that Quebec did use the clause to shield Bill 21, does that imply that Quebec does recognize that this bill infringes on religious and gender rights, on human rights?
That's a great question. The truth is, we don't know, because Quebec has always refused to make any legal arguments about whether Bill 21 violates religious freedoms or equality rights. And actually, some parties in this case are asking the court to make a finding about those rights, even if the court doesn't ultimately strike down the law. They say the public should know from a court's perspective whether Bill 21 does or does not violate these charter rights. The courts below didn't do this, and we'll see if the Supreme Court does.
Now, this case was heard at the Quebec Court of Appeal in 2022. So what is different now that it's before the Supreme Court?
I'd say the stakes are even higher now. There were many interveners before the Quebec Court of Appeal. It was a 4-day hearing, but it was mostly confined to people inside Quebec. At the Supreme Court, there are about 24 more interveners, and they're mostly from outside of Quebec. And one reason for that is that since Bill 21 was passed back in 2019, as I said, the notwithstanding clause has seen a huge resurgence all over Canada. And it's been used several times outside of Quebec, twice in Ontario, once in Saskatchewan, 4 times in Alberta just recently. So now there's a lot of other court cases and a lot of other issues that are going to hinge on the outcome of the Bill 21 appeal. So this isn't just a Quebec case anymore. Canadians all over the country are watching.
Okay. Thank you very much for this, Marion.
Thank you.
Weather brought to you by Gratianscap's second pair is a gift event including designer frames. A second pair free for a limited time.
Well, cloudy skies were part of our forecast today, and the sun could make an appearance to kick off our Tuesday. And in addition to that, we are still holding on to cooler than seasonal temperatures. We're struggling just to get above 0. So far, today's daytime high is exactly 0. Typically, we'd be around 4 degrees. Now, putting our futurecast into motion, we are holding on to a 60% chance of flurries for the next couple of hours. It is this spotty system that is just sort of setting down on Montreal at the moment, but we will continue to see that push eastwards, and around 10 p.m. we should be in the clear, and we start to see some clearing of the clouds we dealt with today just after midnight into the early morning hours. That is when we are expecting to see some sunshine. So around 7 and 8, that's when we have the sunrise. The sun will be prominent, but as we head closer to the afternoon, clouds move in, and with it we see a system that is expecting to bring us a little bit of snow. At this time it looks like a 30% chance of some snow. It is once again a spotty system, so we're not expecting a significant snowfall. As we head into our Wednesday though, clouds return, and that is ahead of yet another system which is expected to impact us Wednesday late day. So we could see a little bit more snow on Wednesday, and in our longer range forecast we could see a rain-snow mix. Tonight we do hold on to that 60% chance of flurries for the next couple of hours. We're only looking at around 1 centimeter of snow. Our overnight low will be -8, feeling like -14. So once again, those cold wintry temperatures, we just can't shake them. We start the day off with sunshine, and -7 is our wake-up temperature. temperature feeling like minus 14 yet again. Expecting to hit a daytime high of 2 degrees with that 30% chance of flurries later in the day. And we have winds coming from the west, southwest, I should say, gusting up to 40 kilometers an hour. Now let's break down our longer range forecast. We know we have a 30% chance of flurries tomorrow. Wednesday, we're expecting around 4 centimeters of snow late day and a high of 1 degree. Finally hitting a seasonal high on Thursday of 4 degrees. But we could see around 10 millimeters of a rain-snow mix. Friday will bring lots of sunshine, but it will be colder than seasonal, below 0 at minus 4. But the next few days after that, we will see a nice forecast.
New Brunswick is trying to deal with an unprecedented $1.4 billion deficit. One of the programs being cut affects veterinarians, and that in turn is going to affect the farmers. Here's Laura Brown.
In their 28 years of dairy farming, the Howes have had several cows require a cesarean section, sometimes in the middle of the night, and they knew a large animal veterinarian awake and ready for their call.
These aren't just veterinarians to us, we've become friends with them. They know our herds. They know us.
The veterinarians she's referring to are employed by the provincial government, specialized in large animal medicine and stationed across New Brunswick. Only Newfoundland and Labrador have a similar service. The rest of the country has private vets. And while farmers pay for each visit, it still costs the province about $4 million a year.
You've struck a devastating blow to the heart of New Brunswick's agriculture community.
New Brunswick recently revealed a historic $1.4 billion deficit in its budget, claiming cuts are necessary to combat it. On the chopping block, the Provincial Veterinary Service.
We called and they basically said, what do you want us to do? And I said, I want you to come save Betty's life. And they were here, I think, 45 minutes.
Betty, the sheep, was saved that day, just weeks after Tim Clancy moved his animal sanctuary from Ontario to New Brunswick. He had only ever worked with private veterinarians, some, he says, who never showed up when called. Clancy is adamant. He'd pay more if it means saving the service.
I think most of us would probably say that's better than no coverage at all.
But commercial farms make up less than a third of the calls to the provincial vets, says the agriculture minister. The rest are hobby or horse farms. The plan is to see the service phased out over 3 years and taken over by the private sector.
Healthcare is important for everybody in New Brunswick, even for our animals.
And farmers worry it won't be the same. Laura Brown, CTV News, Burton, New Brunswick.
And coming up, it is the latest big thing.
In a matter of a few minutes, they left with 20 grand worth of stuff. It's devastating, as a small business owner especially.
Store owners are desperately trying to keep their Pokemon safe. And live, not from New York, it's Saturday night.
Menswear provided by Ernest. Elevate your style with Ernest. Your Health, brought to you by Gratian Scaff. Second pair is a gift event including designer frames. A second pair free for a limited time.
Thousands of Canadians are waiting for a long-term care bed. Provinces have turned to a mix of public and private facilities, and that's raising concerns. Here's Maria Saru.
Around 200 private long-term care beds could be available in the next couple years to PEI seniors waiting for a spot. Acting Health Minister Corey Deagle suggested the province would soon announce a $100 million investment at a town hall this week.
It's all just really extremely good news for all islanders.
Some PEI hospitals are overcrowded, partly because of patients filling acute care units while waiting for a long-term care bed. Private operators have become a key part of building capacity, with leaders saying it's a faster fix. But despite demand increasing, some researchers say governments should be adding public, not private beds.
We have lots of evidence indicating a pattern of lower staffing levels, of staff with fewer recognized training capacities, lower quality care, I'll put it that way.
Last fall, a group of caregivers signed a letter to PEI's health ministry expressing concerns about the care and oversight of residents in private facilities. They cited lack of timely medical attention to treat preventable bed sores, untrained, inadequate staffing, and inspections that often don't address underlying issues. The executive director of PEI's Nursing Home Association says the safety and well-being of both residents and staff is a top priority.
There's a high standard of care. A lot of times people don't realize there is a lot of oversight that is provided for the safety of everyone.
The Health Ministry says it's actively implementing recommendations listed in a COVID-19 long-term care review released in 2023, but a spokesperson couldn't clarify by deadline which have been completed. Maria Saru, CTV News, Charlottetown.
Business owners in British Columbia are being plagued by a rash of break-ins, and the merchandise attracting the thieves, Pokemon. Andrew Johnson reports.
Even at $1 a card, that's a pretty solid value.
Business is brisk at Jesse Guyon's New Westminster, BC collectibles shop, but the bartering is taking place behind bars after what happened in January.
Even watching it back now is just infuriating.
Watching this, 4 hooded thieves bashing their way into his store and making off with as many Pokemon cards as they could carry.
In a matter of a few minutes, they left with 20 grand worth of stuff. It's devastating, as a small business owner especially.
Guyon is unfortunately not alone. Thieves used a car to bust their way into an Abbotsford shop, leaving 2.5 minutes later with $30,000 in product, mostly Pokemon. A few days later, this was the scene in Burnaby after a 2:30 a.m. smash job, the third break-in here in 6 months.
You work really hard to, bring your dream to life, but then here are people trying to take away your livelihood.
Stores have also been hit from Halifax to Toronto. In New York, armed thieves went in during the day, part of a Pokemon problem coinciding with a post-COVID popularity boom and soaring card values.
$3,400 is about market price of what this card goes for.
Police say once stolen, they're easy to sell and hard for investigators to find.
Very difficult to track that type of merchandise. Certainly more difficult than something traditional like, say, electronics.
Police are recommending small business owners running a shop like this reach out and have officers come by to sweep the store and make some recommendations to increase security, even on a budget.
Something as simple as increased lighting, trimming back hedges.
This goes across the whole frame of the shop.
Besides the bars, Jesse Guyon's also added 24/7 security surveillance at his store.
We're definitely pretty confident now.
And able to focus on the collectibles that are his passion. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, New Westminster, BC.
Celine Dion is set to return to the stage in Paris this fall.
There were nights when the wind was so cold.
Posters have gone up around Paris. Dion has posted photos of herself in Paris on Instagram. It's believed she's planning 2 concerts a week in September and October. They would be her first full shows in over 5 years. She was forced to cancel all her engagements in 2021 when she was diagnosed with stiff person syndrome. A British version of Saturday Night Live has debuted to mostly positive reviews.
Gather round, children. Nanny is here with everything you need for a practically perfect... You know what? I'm going to drop the voice. So yeah, I've got everything you need for your first ever SNL UK.
The first episode of SNL UK was hosted by Tina Fey, and it struck closely in format to the U.S. original. It featured a regular mix of sketches, the Weekend Update segment, and performances by musical guests. The series runs for 8 episodes.
Business News brought to you by Au Vieux de Louvre, where memories and meals come together.
Donald Trump said he'd talked to Iran about a possible end to the war, and with that, the oil prices fell. Morella Fernandez has more.
The news sent the price of oil into free fall after 3 weeks of climbing higher. At the start of the day, West Texas Intermediate sank more than $10 U.S. a barrel. Energy stocks have been spiking with the key oil shipping route paralyzed by the conflict. Donald Trump says he will postpone hitting Iran's energy infrastructure for 5 days to allow for negotiations. Hundreds of Algoma steelworkers are out of work in Sault Ste. Marie, Ontario. In December, the company announced a massive layoff triggered by the huge American tariffs on the metal moving south. Those layoffs are now taking effect. The annual Couch Potato Report shows more Canadians are choosing streaming services that have ads to keep costs in check. They cost about 40% less than streaming without ads. And Canadians continue to cut cable and satellite services as well. That's coming from Convergence Research, who puts out the report. Those subscriptions fell 4% last year. Here are the closing numbers for the day. The Canadian dollar is down to 72.86. West Texas Intermediate dropped over $10 to 88.13. Western Canadian Select is up to 81.91. And the TSX gained 566 points today. Those are your business headlines. I'm Marilla Fernandez.
Montreal is changing how it helps businesses affected by construction. Some business owners, though, say even with the changes, relief might fall short. Laurence Brisson-Debreuil has more.
Lunch hour once meant a full house here on Stanley Street.
Our sales have just gotten worse and worse and worse.
Brigade Pizzeria co-owner Jean-Daniel Nadeau has watched his restaurant slowly empty out. He says the pandemic, followed by years of downtown construction, especially along St. Catherine West, have taken a major toll. Before that, he says business was steady every day. Now sales are down 60%, but expenses haven't budged.
The taxes are still at 100%. The Hydro-Quebec is still 100%. Everything is still 100%. And we, in this economy, we cannot raise our price just, to fulfill the gap. It doesn't make sense.
The mayor says her administration is listening. City Hall is promising faster, simpler financial aid for businesses hit by major construction. The new program merges two systems with $5,000 up front and up to $40,000 total. The eligibility window is now 3 months of continuous work with applications online and payments expected to come faster. The city says this is also about reviving Montreal.
We have to make sure that we're keeping our local merchants and their vitality in downtown core.
More businesses now qualify, with over 20 commercial zones being expanded. City Councillor Leslie Roberts says the old system left too many out, including on Stanley Street, where only one side qualified before.
What we did was just change the zoning so that both sides now have the eligibility.
Meaning Brigade Pizzeria is now included. But even with promises of a system that's broader, simpler, and faster, Nadeau says there's still a big unknown.
Are we going to get $500, $20, $0, or $440,000? I have no idea. And that's the biggest issue. We don't know if we're really going to go and get help.
After 12 years in business, he's hoping to stay open for many more, just without the constant disruption outside his door.
Downtown needs love. It really needs love.
Laurence Brisson-Dubreuil, CTV News.
Air Canada has released more information on the collision at LaGuardia Airport. Now, Caroline, they've released the identities of the crew that was on board.
Yes, we will be following this developing story tonight. We now know the identities of both the pilots that were sadly killed, as well as the 2 flight attendants who survived. And we will also have more of an update from the NTSB tonight, which is holding another news conference. As well, we're going to hear from the representative of more than 100 community groups that say they'll be going on strike to spotlight the grueling and poorly paid work they do despite growing demand for their services. That's all on our late show tonight at 11:30. Mitsumi?
Thanks very much, Caroline.
Stay with us. We've got another full night of great shows for you right here tonight on CTV.
A music professor in New York City has gone viral for his songs, and what's remarkable is who's writing the lyrics. Here's Danny New.
There was an Millions online are falling in love with the music of Stephen Spencer, featuring lyrics contributed by an unseen prodigy.
You could not have thought of Little Tall Prince. Nobody could.
No. I mean, yeah, this is so clearly from the mind of a 3-year-old.
Over the past 5 months, Stephen has been taking stories invented by his 3-year-old daughter, whom he prefers to keep out of the limelight. There was a purple bear princess. She was a grown-up dog. And turning them into these breezy gems from his living room.
If I'm lucky, I will record them on my phone and I'll have audio. Sometimes she'll start telling me a story and I don't have my phone. And I don't want to stop and go get it.
By trade, Stephen is a composer who teaches music at New York's Hunter College, and he says he was already experimenting with writing pop music when, around October, there was a little woman who liked wiggling so much. She liked wiggling. His daughter started telling the story of a wiggling woman, and he recorded it verbatim. Naturally, inspiration for these songs can come from anywhere, like with the song Regular Rabbit.
There was one just regular rabbit. She had regular ponytails just like me.
Which Steven says came about when she learned the word regular.
She was like, it's my regular phone and my regular dinner and my regular mom and my regular dad. And it was just everything was regular. So she told the story. And that's how she started. She was like, there was one just regular rabbit.
And while these videos can make you laugh, some of the comments online have actually turned emotional. One commenter writing, I'm going to be so sad when she learns proper verb conjugation.
Music felt like a really natural way to kind of make those impermanent moments feel like they could last longer.
And Steven has started releasing these songs on streaming platforms, with Little Tall Prince dropping a few weeks ago and Important Mermaid coming next. By the way, Steven says he's received messages from parents saying now their kids want to try writing songs too. In New York, for ABC News, I'm Danny New.
Okay, so more snow.
Yes, it breaks my heart every time I have to disappoint you with that. But yes, we do have a little bit of snow this evening. We're expecting around 1 centimeter, and then there is a slight chance that tomorrow we could also see snow. So in terms of the timeline tonight, it looks like the majority of that system, which was spotty to begin with, is still sort of hovering around Montreal, but we're just on the edge. So by 10 p.m., it pushes eastwards. We'll see clearing into the early morning hours and lots of sunshine. Overnight will be on the colder side. We're looking at -8, feeling like -14. Sunshine to start our Tuesday, cloudy in the afternoon, that 30% chance of flurries, a high of 2 degrees, and we'll be dealing with winds gusting up to 40 kilometers an hour.
And that's it for us. Have a good evening. Stay well. Good night.